This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, plus special features and reports with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
Good Friday afternoon. Welcome aboard. We're going to start in the Middle East today, where there's been a serious setback in the already shaky ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. 3 buses blew up today near Tel Aviv, hours after the release of what was thought to be the bodies of 4 Israeli hostages. Turns out that was not the case. One of the bodies Hamas handed over was a Gazan woman, not an Israeli hostage. That hostage, Shiri Bibas, was the mother of 2 young boys whose bodies were returned to Israel. Correspondent Keir Simmons picks up the story from there.
Israel says available intelligence and forensic evidence indicates the 2 boys, who were just 4 years and not even 9 months when they were captured, were murdered in captivity.
Speaking through an interpreter today, Israel's Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu says he will make Hamas pay for failing to live up to terms of the ceasefire.
We will work with determination to bring Shiri home together with all our hostages, both living and dead, and ensure that Hamas pays the full price for this cruel and malicious violation of the agreement.
Hamas is supposed to return 6 more Israeli hostages tomorrow. These ones, unlike the last, are alive. Now to the war between Russia and Ukraine. U.S. Special Envoy and retired Army General Keith Kellogg met today in Kyiv with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky. Correspondent Richard Engel.
Right now, Ukrainians are finding themselves caught between a rock and a hard place. Do they give in to President Trump's demands, or do they face the possibility of having to fight the Russians without American help?
The Trump administration wants 50% ownership of Ukraine's vast mineral resources in exchange for the billions in war aid we have given them. Monday, by the way, marks the 3-year anniversary of the war. By a 52-48 vote margin, the U.S. Senate overnight approved a $340 billion budget blueprint. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul was the only Republican to vote no on the spending package.
This kind of sets the table for Senate Republicans to forge ahead with their approach to pass President Trump's policy agenda. This package focuses on border security, beefing up the military and energy production.
Chad Pergram with Fox News.
Here's the rub. The House has to approve the same plan. Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, said that this was a non-starter. So, they might be dead in the water unless A, they can get on the same page, and B, sync up with the Senate.
Pergram says Republicans will not be able to pass tax cut legislation until they get this spending plan across the finish line. President Trump and Elon Musk are celebrating yesterday's big court victory on shrinking the size of the federal government.
Elon Musk whipped out a chainsaw at a conservative conference Thursday.
This is the chainsaw for bureaucracy.
As a federal judge said his and President Donald Trump's efforts to hack through the federal workforce can proceed. Earlier, the president praised Doge's efforts at a Black History Month event.
Elon Musk has done an amazing job, I have to tell you. Him and his super geniuses.
Correspondent Jared Hill. With tax season in full swing, the IRS today began firing thousands of non-essential workers.
We are told that they are cognizant of the fact that we are in tax filing season right now, and so their first rounds of cuts primarily affect people who work in enforcement in the small business branch in particular. So it won't necessarily have much of an impact on people who are trying to file their taxes right now.
CBS's Nancy Cordes. A rash of recent plane crashes has many wondering if it's safe to fly and if it's prudent right now to cut back at the FAA. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York says it's not.
And I'm especially concerned about the impact that these firings will have on New York airspace. With major airports like Kennedy and LaGuardia, our state has some of the most congested skies in the country.
But Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy says none of the aviation firings are air traffic controllers or critical safety personnel. The U.S. Senate has narrowly confirmed Kash Patel as FBI director. He has vowed to end the weaponization of the Justice Department. Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson says Patel's number one job is to
return integrity, restore integrity to the FBI. That is Kash's mission. Return to a single system of justice, one for all Americans.
The final vote on the Patel nomination, 51-49. Accused CEO killer Luigi Mangione in court today for the first time since his December arraignment on murder and terrorism charges. The 26-year-old Ivy League educated suspect accused in the shooting death of healthcare executive Brian Thompson. Chanley Painter at Fox News.
The former valedictorian faces several charges, including a murder charge that carries the possibility of the death penalty.
The 50-year-old Thompson, husband and father of two, was shot in the back on a New York City sidewalk December 4th. Mangione was captured at a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania, 5 days later. Connor McDavid lifted Team Canada to a 3-2 overtime win over Team USA in the championship game last night of the Four Nations face-off in Boston.
Centering pass, McDavid scores! Connor McDavid wins it for Canada!
McDavid netted the game winner 8 minutes into the OT session. There's been a shocking deep-sea discovery made in the area where the Bible says Moses parted the Red Sea. Scientists have discovered natural death traps in that body of water, brine pools, some 4,000 feet below the surface of the Gulf of Aqaba, are 10 times saltier than normal seawater. No marine life that enters there survives. Oceanographers have discovered similar death traps in the Mediterranean Sea, the Gulf of America, and the Arctic Ocean, but none at such a depth as that in the Red Sea, and right where Moses parted the Red Sea. How about that? Still to come on the Noon Report. Hochul says Adams can stay with strings attached. The latest on the prison strikes in New York. And did you know the best museum in the country is located in Pennsylvania? We'll tell you where in Pennsylvania after this.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams, though we've got another wintry day underway today. We get a bit of a break this weekend. I'll have forecast details coming up in 10 minutes.
All right, Kevin, we'll check in with you then. Let's check the stories next, making news across New York and Pennsylvania. 6 correctional officers have been charged with murder in the beating death of Robert Brooks at a prison near Utica, New York. 3 others face lesser charges. All were released on bail yesterday. Special prosecutor Bill Fitzpatrick says bail or no bail, justice will be served.
Bail is not an issue in this case. The case is not going to be decided because someone's locked up for 8 months or 9 months till the case comes to trial. These guys aren't going anywhere.
The victim's son was in court for yesterday's arraignment.
There are probably thousands of Robert Brooks before Robert Brooks. And if we don't do something today and hold these people accountable, there will be more Robert Brooks.
The defendants will be in court again at the end of next month. New York says it's willing to make concessions to end the workers' strike at dozens of prisons statewide. It's suspending some aspects of the HALT Act, which limits the use of solitary confinement. But guards say that's not enough, and things are upside down right now at New York's prisons. Former corrections officer Ernie Dole says it used to be
officers ran the prison, inmates listened. Now, inmates run the prison, officers get in trouble for not doing what the inmates want.
The guards are demanding better pay and working conditions. Many are forced to work 24-hour shifts. Governor Hochul maintains the job action's illegal. She's activated the National Guard to help maintain orders. Dole's advice to the striking workers:
don't give up, fight for what's right. No matter how much the governor says get back to work and do your job, She needs to do her job first.
Talks to end the prison strikes get underway in earnest next week. A high-profile trial could wrap up today in Western New York.
Yeah, closing arguments are expected today in the trial of 27-year-old Hadi Matar, a New Jersey man accused of attempted murder in the 2022 Chautauqua Institution knife attack on prominent author Salman Rushdie, suffering more than a dozen stab wounds and losing an eye. Matar declined to take the stand in his own defense yesterday. Prosecutors called a forensic expert as their final witness. Matar still faces a separate federal prosecution. Mark Webster, Family Life News.
Thank you, Mark. Governor Hochul will not remove from office New York City Mayor Eric Adams, but she is appointing an inspector general to oversee that office. The governor says she's deeply troubled by recent allegations against the mayor.
It is my sincere hope that these dark days will pass, elections will occur, and the people of New York will decide who they trust to govern this extraordinary city.
Former New York City Council member Joe Borelli.
I think this is less about Eric Adams and perhaps about putting some constraints on the mayor in the future, right? We have these rumors out there that Andrew Cuomo might be running. He is the big bad wolf of New York politics. If he runs for mayor, I think Kathy Hochul's a little bit concerned that he'll be able to do some end arounds on her.
Hochul was Cuomo's lieutenant governor from 2015 to 2021. Mayor Adams is taking heat from Democrats for his cooperation with the Trump administration on efforts to deport illegal immigrants. President Trump's appointed Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro to the Council of Governors. He's one of 10 governors serving on that bipartisan task force. There's a flag flap unfurling in Hazleton, PA. The city's large Dominican population wants the Dominican flag flown at City Hall on March 1st. That's the 181st anniversary of the Dominican Republic. But the mayor of Hazleton, Jeff Kuzat, tells WBRE he will not honor that request.
If we do it for one country's flag or one organization's flag, we have to do it for everybody. And then where do you draw the line? To me, there's no flag that should be flown except the American flag, the Pennsylvania flag, the POW, Missing in Action flag, and our city flag.
More than 45% of Hazleton's 30,000 residents are Dominican. A Pennsylvania museum has just been named best in the country for the second straight year.
Pittsburgh's Heinz History Center has been recognized by USA Today as the #1 history museum in America in its annual Reader's Choice Awards. This is the second straight year the museum has earned the top spot on the list. The History Center finished at the top of the Best History Museum list that included 20 other nationally recognized cultural organizations, including the National Civil Rights Museum, the National World War II Museum, and the Museum of the American Revolution. The History Museum remains the largest in the state, providing 6 floors of interactive exhibits and activities. Brian Query, Family Life News.
All right, good stuff. Thank you, Brian. For the first time since the 1970s, the New York Yankees are changing their facial hair policy.
The Bronx Bombers will now allow players to have well-groomed beards starting this season. The Yankees have barred players from having facial hair other than a mustache since the 1970s. Managing general partner Hal Steinbrenner said the decision was made after speaking with former and current players. He added, "It is the appropriate time to move beyond the familiar comfort of our former policy." I'm Natalie Migliori, New York.
More sports next. It's the 2-minute drill on Family Life. It took overtime, but Canada was able to beat Team USA in the first ever 4 nations face-off. The best of the best in the NHL. Connor McDavid netting the game winner 8 minutes into the extra session to give our neighbors to the north bragging rights. Final score 3-2. Big news out of the NBA. San Antonio Spurs superstar Victor Wembanyama is out for the season. The Frenchman and former #1 draft pick has a blood clot in his right shoulder. Wembanyama won Rookie of the Year last year. The Mavericks will be without their star big man for a couple more weeks. Dallas power forward Anthony Davis struggling with an abductor strain. That's the muscle on the outside of your hip. Davis was injured during his team debut after being involved in that blockbuster trade that sent Luka Doncic to the LA Lakers. Action on the hardwood last night. Boston beat the 76ers 124 to 104. Jason Tatum recording a triple-double to lead the way for the Celts. Philadelphia is now 15 games below 500. The red-hot Cavs keep their winning ways going. A 110-97 victory last night over the Nets. Cleveland's won 5 straight, and with a 45-10 record, they are in first place in the Eastern Conference. The Knicks edged the Bulls in overtime, 113-111. Your final. Karl Anthony Towns had a big night with 32 points and 18 rebounds. The Knickerbockers have won 3 straight. Baseball news, Aaron Boone's contract has just been extended. He'll be with the Yankees at least through the 2027 season. Boone is going into his 8th year with New York. The Bronx Bombers have made the playoffs in all but one of those years. And one of the most decorated offensive linemen in the last decade is hanging up the cleats. We're talking about Dallas Cowboys right guard Zach Martin. He's announced his retirement from the NFL. The 34-year-old is a 9-time Pro Bowl selection. At the Family Life Sports Desk, I'm Bob Price. And still to come on the Noon Report, why healthy families matter so much. What the prison protests say about the state of corrections in New York. And sports betting is a big problem in Pennsylvania.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm Shane Morris. In early December, Google announced its latest quantum computing chip called Willow. In a blog post, quantum AI founder Hartmut Nevin boasted that this new chip is so unimaginably fast, the mere fact that it works is evidence for the existence of parallel universes. Now, advertisers have always made exaggerated claims about their products. Companies falling behind competitors are under a lot of pressure to offer something game-changing. And that's exactly the case with Google. Once the undisputed titan of the internet, but now losing ground to OpenAI and other tech innovators. According to Nevin, quote, Willow performed a computation in under 5 minutes that would take one of today's fastest supercomputers 10 to the 25th or 10 septillion years. It lends credence to the notion that quantum computation occurs in many parallel universes, in line with the idea that we live in a multiverse. There are 2 separate claims here, one sounding more like something from a Marvel movie. First, the claim that Google's quantum chip far surpasses any supercomputer needs to be examined, considering what quantum computing is. As theoretical chemist Neil Shenvi wrote, the idea behind quantum computing is not new. Unlike conventional computers, which calculate using millions of transistors that can be either on or off, quantum computers take advantage of an effect in quantum physics that allows each tiny switch to be on, off, or any combination in between. But as more switches are added to a quantum chip, errors also multiply exponentially faster than in a normal computer. This means error correction is a major challenge to the progress of quantum computing. According to computer scientist Alan Woodward at Surrey University, reducing errors below a magical threshold is a much better description of what Google actually did in December. As he told the BBC, it's a threshold everyone's been trying to get to for a very, very long time. So the idea that Willow smoked the world's supercomputers by septillions of years isn't really a fair comparison in Woodward's view, since the algorithm Google implemented was designed specifically for quantum computers. So is Google's other claim that its quantum chip is evidence for the existence of parallel universes credible? Well, as Neil Shenvi explained in his helpful analysis, the spooky properties of quantum physics are very real and very much involved in quantum computing. And some physicists have indeed explained this uncertainty by proposing that we live in a multiverse that is constantly branching off to form new universes. However, as Shenvi pointed out, that's not the only or even the most popular explanation. In fact, there are 3 major schools of thought on the strange properties of quantum mechanics, 2 of which, neorealism and the Copenhagen interpretation, do not require proposing parallel universes. In short, Google's chip sort of working cannot be interpreted as evidence for parallel universes because its function is entirely consistent with theories in which ours is the only universe. For many, proposing an infinite number of parallel universes is preferable to admitting that the only one we can observe is improbably well designed and bears the fingerprints of a creator. So, no, Google's new computer chip does not prove the existence of the multiverse. What it does prove is that when it comes to certain concepts in physics, it's just as important to be able to cut through questionable worldview speculations as it is questionable marketing tactics. For the Colson Center, I'm Shane Morris.
All right, Shane, thank you very much. The weekend is here. Kevin Williams is near.
Here is your Family Life weather forecast. The call for this afternoon, still rather cloudy for many. Breaks of sun, still some lake flurries around. Temperatures peaking in the low to mid-20s. Breaking tonight down, the clouds will, with low temps in the teens. Tomorrow, a little bit of sun will poke through the clouds with high temperatures reaching the low 30s. Low to mid-30s Sunday. Limited sun, chance for a few flurries.
All right, we'll take 30s. Thank you, Kevin. It is Friday, the 21st of February, and this is the Noon Report on Family Life. Welcome back to another edition of Capital Connection. Fridays during the Noon Report, we give you direct connection to all that's happening in Albany and Harrisburg with the experts on the issues at the state capitals. They are, as always, Michael Geer at the Pennsylvania Family Institute and Jason McGuire with New York Families. Well, guys, we want to talk family matters today. I was struck by the inaugural report from the Family Structure Index. It ranks all 50 states in terms of family and marriage stability. And this year, Pennsylvania's 34th on that list. New York is 48th. So I guess you could say both states have some work to do, especially New York. And Jason, we'll get to you in a minute. But Michael, I want to start with you, this Family Structure Index. What's your reaction to this report?
Well, we're pleased to have participated in releasing this information that just came out this week that was produced by a team of sociologists from the University of Virginia. And basically it's ranking the states looking at a number of different key factors on issues like fertility, marriage rates, and also how many teens are ending up living in homes where both a mother and a father are not present.
Yeah, just 56% of teens in Pennsylvania are growing up in homes with both a mom and a dad. In New York, I think it's something like 47%, Jason. In New York, there's only two other states in the country where it's worse to raise a family, Rhode Island and New Mexico. Jay, what was your reaction to this report?
You know, it confirmed a lot of what we sensed. I mean, essentially, this structure index, the Family Structure Index, will help both policymakers and the public understand that New York has a long ways to go to get to family stability. But essentially, you can't be neutral on the family. If you want to have a strong state and a strong nation, you want to have strong families. And if public policy is not upholding the family and elevating the importance of the family, well, then really you're sliding backwards and you're undermining it.
Yeah.
So every public policy decision needs to be viewed through the lens of, does this help or hinder the family in the Empire State and across the country?
Yeah, I hope public policymakers read this Family Structure report, because, you know, one of the great frustrations is there hasn't really been a lot of scientific evidence to suggest how healthy our families are. This is based in science. This is empirical data that you can look at and see how our families are doing. And our families, Michael, are in real trouble. I want to ask you, how is Pennsylvania undercutting families, policymakers that is, and is there any legislation in the works to strengthen families in Pennsylvania?
Well, it's interesting to look at both the policy realm, but also the cultural realm on looking at these issues. So when we look at the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, there are certainly policies that undermine the well-being of families. There are policies in tax structure and in welfare programs and other things that actually are incentives to move away from marriage rather than towards marriage. And then when you look at the schools and things, we need to be teaching something called the success sequence, which is that you should try to graduate from college and then get a job and then get married before having children. If you follow that sequence, those three steps in that order, 97% of them will never be in poverty. That's an astounding statistic that we need to be teaching in our schools, in our churches, and the government leaders need to understand that as well.
Wow. Senator Rick Santorum, Jason, said decades ago that if you want a healthy country, it starts with having healthy family. Healthy family means healthy churches, which means healthy communities, which means a healthy country. I want to ask you the same question. How is New York State policy undercutting families? And is there anything in the works? I know New York is a really deep, deep blue state, but is there anything in the works in Albany to strengthen families?
Well, Infamously, you hear about things like the marriage penalty. So if a couple is living together and is receiving certain state benefits, if they get married, they may lose some of their benefits. So that undermines marriage. We see the attacks on parental rights when it comes to areas of education and, just whether or not we can even define the terms mom and dad. We have to say parent one and parent two in our structure today. So there's a lot of things that we have to be looking at from a public policy perspective. But if we can keep it real simple, it really can go back to even the church. And if the church would simply step up and begin to celebrate and to preach about and recommend marriage, lift it up, prioritize that relationship, and set a model for the culture and society at large, well, I think we can make a lot of headway on moving forward on the family.
Now, Family Structure Index is what it's called. We encourage all our listeners to go online and find this. I know both of you have written about it on your websites, and we'll give that at the end. But let's dig into a couple other things. Michael, lawmakers are trying to make sense of the more than $50 billion state budget. The governor is calling for two major revenue sources this year. Of course, one is marijuana. The other is more gambling revenue. I imagine you probably are not a fan of either of these.
No, and I'm not shocked that that's what the governor is pushing in his budget address. We're on a spending spree in Pennsylvania, spending ourselves into oblivion, and then the way to try to make up for that is to addict the citizens, whether it's with drug addiction, with marijuana, and the things that leads to. And then when you look at the so-called skill games that are showing up in convenience stores and truck stops and things, currently unregulated, the governor wants to have the state starting with 30,000 machines across the state going up to 40,000. Wow. It doesn't make sense, and we need to cut back on spending.
Yeah, I got another gambling question for you in a minute, Michael. But first, Jason, we can't ignore what's happening at prisons all over New York now. It's up to 24, I think, now, where the guards have walked off the job, and it's become a powder keg out there. The governor calling in the National Guard. I mean, this is pretty crazy stuff going on here. What are your concerns as you look at what's happening in our correctional system in New York right now?
Well, essentially, I think you are seeing that breakdown of society. I mean, I see it in Albany all the time. Policymakers are breaking away from victims' rights and for the rights of the criminal. And we're now seeing that played out in even the corrections systems across the state. The safety of the officer seems secondary to what's going on in the prisons, in the jails. And yet we see that the state is walking away from protecting these officers when they're desperately crying out for help.
Michael, the Journal of the American Medical Association recently announced that internet searches for gambling addiction helplines have jumped more than 30% the past 3 years, and your state, Pennsylvania, is one of the top 3 states for that. This article cites the rise in sports betting as being the main contributor for this. Why are the current safeguards to ward off gambling addiction not sufficient, in your opinion?
Because it's basically one step forward in terms of those safeguards and about 10 steps backwards in terms of the promotion of gambling, the expansion of gambling. We just talked about what Governor Shapiro wants to see happen in our state with these skill games and taxing them. But then in addition, the ubiquitousness of the online gambling, that it's on everybody's smartphone, that you can access gambling instantly and in the privacy of your own home, a teenager in a bedroom, watching a DraftKings ad on the Super Bowl or something like that is lured into it. And the meager efforts to try to address the addiction just don't cut it.
Yeah. Michael, you're hosting an event. We talk about families and how important families are. A segment of the family that often gets overlooked is the grandparents. I know you are a proud grandpa yourself, but can you talk about the vital role that grandparents play in the success of families and maybe use that to promote an event you have coming up?
Well, the benefit of grandparents and just extended family engagement with children and grandchildren is a vital part of what family is all about. And we at Pennsylvania Family Institute are excited to be hosting an event on March 29th in Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania, this beautiful Star Barn, called the Grandparenting with Grace Seminar, led by Dr. Larry McCall, who's been a guest on Focus on the Family. And those in Pennsylvania who are in the grandparent stage of life might really benefit from it.
Yeah. Hey, hats off to our grandparents. They are so appreciated and so valued. And I know a lot of folks are going to want to make a plan to attend that event. Speaking of events, Jason, it's back. Legislative Day 2025 won't be long now. Tuesday, March 18th in Albany. For those who are listening for the first time, maybe are not familiar with Legislative Day, explain what it's all about and why people really, especially people of faith, really need need to make a concerted effort to attend this year?
Legislative Day is generally our largest event of the year, where hundreds of New Yorkers gather together. The people who the rest of the year think they're alone in defending life and family and marriage and holding those traditional values can come to the state capitol, make a statement, and see they are not alone, and communicate to elected officials, to policymakers, things like the importance of the family that we've been talking about even today in this program. This year, we're going to prioritize some things along the lines of getting Christians more engaged in the political process, what that means, why they should do it, why we should be salt and light in the culture at large, including the political system. And we're welcoming Brandon Showalter from the Christian Post to come and to talk about really where do we go next in this transgender movement. We've made some great gains at the federal level, but there are still hearts and minds that have to change. This issue has not gone away, and we want to arm people to continue the trend to defend what it is to be male and female in the society at large.
All right, can't wait for that. Again, Tuesday, March 18th. Mark your calendar. Legislative Day. It's the largest gathering of Christians anywhere in New York. Jason, if folks want to find out more, where can they online?
NewYorkFamilies.org.
And whether or not you're a grandparent, there's an event for grandparents coming up in Pennsylvania. You're promoting that as well, Michael. Where can folks learn more?
DAFamily.org.
All right, the Capital Connection crew, they get it done every Friday on Family Life. Now, you can subscribe, listen to, and share this feature, along with all our original podcasts, at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or FamilyLife.org.
Good afternoon. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. We're going to get a little break from some of the harsh winter weather as we head into the weekend. High pressure will move overhead and settle the wind and partially clear the skies for a time. We're not talking about anything particularly exceptional, but we'll break the freeze point in many areas, which we haven't done in a while in most of the area. The call for this afternoon, though, still rather cloudy for many. Breaks of sun, still some lake flurries around. Temperatures peaking in the low to mid-20s. Breaking tonight down, the clouds will, with low temps in the teens. Tomorrow, a little bit of sun will poke through the clouds with high temperatures reaching the low 30s. Low to mid-30s Sunday. Limited sun, chance for a few flurries.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Have a wonderful weekend. Finally at noon, did you hear Major League Baseball's using robots to call balls and strikes during spring training games? CBS's Jim Krasula.
Baseball has been experimenting with the system in the minor leagues over the past 4 years. Bridget Binsbacher is executive director of Spring Training's Arizona Cactus League.
I think it makes sense for them to use spring training as an opportunity to test this system and see how it works.
The so-called automated ball strike system could start as early as the 2026 Major League Baseball season to help MLB home plate umpires, but not replace them.
All right, can't replace those umps, otherwise the coaches would not have anyone to yell at. And that's our world. Believe me, I've been there. The world we live in. Friday, February 21st. Have a wonderful weekend. I'm Bob Price. Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at FamilyLife.org.